Collapse and comeback. January the 5th, 2024. 6 minutes after takeoff from Portland, Oregon, a Boeing 737 MAX-9 is climbing through 16,000 feet. Then, a bang. In a single second, a panel the size of a fridge door is simply gone. Where the wall of the cabin used to be, there is now a hole open to the freezing night sky. Phones, a headrest, the shirt off a teenage boy's back, torn out into the dark. Somehow, everyone on board will live. This is Alaska Airlines Flight 1282, and the most frightening part of the story is not the hole you can see. When investigators pulled the paperwork and examined the recovered panel, they found something that turned a lucky escape into a scandal. The panel, called a door plug, had been held in place by 4 bolts, and those 4 bolts were missing. Not broken, not sheared off. Missing. They had never been put back after work at the factory. For months, on flight after flight, the plug had been creeping upward bit by bit, until the day it finally let go. 4 missing bolts is a shocking detail on its own, but of everything this investigation uncovered, it was the least shocking part. So what actually blew out? On a fully packed airline, a 737 MAX-9 needs an extra emergency exit near the back. Airlines that fit fewer seats don't need it, so instead of a working door, Boeing fills the opening with a plug. A shaped panel, bolted in, sealed over, and hidden behind the normal cabin wall. Most passengers never know it is there. Fitted correctly, it is completely safe and holds the cabin's pressure for decades. Fitted with no bolts, it is a cork in a bottle, waiting for the pressure to push it out. To understand how the bolts vanished, go back to Boeing's factory in Renton, Washington. The fuselage, the plane's metal body, arrives from a supplier called Spirit Aerosystems. On this aircraft, workers needed to open the door plug to fix damaged rivets nearby. To do that, they removed the 4 securing bolts. The repair was made. The plug was closed. But the bolts were never reinstalled, and Boeing's own tracking system, meant to guarantee that every safety-critical part is signed back off, failed to catch it. No single villain. Just a job left undone on a production line moving fast. Here is where most tellings stop. Sloppy paperwork, a freak escape, lesson learned. But the door plug was not a one-off. To see what it really exposed, you have to rewind more than 5 years, to 2 flights that did not end with everyone walking away. Because before the MAX was the plane with the hole in it, the MAX was the plane that fell out of the sky. Twice. When Boeing built the MAX, it fitted bigger, more efficient engines to a design first drawn in the 1960s. The new engines changed how the plane handled, so Boeing added software to quietly correct it, a system called MCAS. Its job was to nudge the nose down if the plane pointed too high. The problem? MCAS took its reading from a single sensor on the outside of the plane. If that one sensor was wrong, the software would think the nose was too high when it wasn't and push the nose down anyway. Again and again. And most pilots had never been told the system even existed. On the 29th of October 2018, Lion Air Flight 610 took off from Jakarta, Indonesia. A faulty sensor fed MCAS a false reading, and the software began pushing the nose down. The pilots fought back over and over, countering a system they didn't know was there. Minutes after takeoff, the aircraft hit the Java Sea. All 189 people on board were killed. Boeing's early response pointed toward the airline and the crew. The plane, the company said, was safe. Then it happened again. On the 10th of March 2019, Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 left Addis Ababa. The same sensor fault, the same software pushing down, the same desperate fight in the cockpit. 6 minutes after takeoff, it crashed, killing all 157 people aboard. 2 nearly identical disasters, 5 months apart. Together they took 346 lives. This time there was no blaming the crews. Within days, regulators around the world did what they had refused to do after the first crash. They grounded every single 737 MAX on the planet. The grounding lasted 20 months, one of the longest in aviation history. Around the world, hundreds of brand new jets sat parked, going nowhere. Investigations found that MCAS had been buried in the design and barely mentioned to regulators or pilots. Boeing rewrote the software, retrained crews, and slowly the MAX returned to the skies through late 2020. The direct cost, fines, compensation, and grounded fleets has been estimated at more than $20 billion. The name 737 MAX had become shorthand for everything that had gone wrong with how a great engineering company worked. And now the second twist, the one that ties the crashes to the door plug 5 years later. The warnings were not hindsight. They were on the record years early. In June 2018, months before the first crash, a Boeing senior manager named Ed Pearson wrote to his bosses that the factory was chaotic, rushed, and unsafe, and begged them to slow the line. Earlier still, a quality manager named John Barnett had spent years inside Boeing warning that defective parts and skipped inspections were being waved through. Different people, different years, the same message. The pressure to build faster was quietly winning against the discipline to build right. John Barnett spent more than 3 decades at Boeing before retiring and taking his concerns public. In March 2024, while giving legal testimony against the company, he was found dead. His family has since filed a wrongful death lawsuit, saying Boeing's treatment of him contributed to it. Boeing has denied wrongdoing. Whatever the final legal answer, the timing landed hard. A man who had warned about Boeing's culture for years, gone in the middle of holding it to account. In June 2025, the investigation into the door plug delivered its verdict. The cause was not really 4 bolts. It was, in the board's words, Boeing's inadequate training, guidance, and oversight. A factory where a safety-critical job could be left undone and nobody noticed. The regulator, the FAA, was faulted too, for oversight that had missed it. It was the same diagnosis as the crashes, in a different disguise. Boeing had promised to fix its culture after 346 deaths. The empty bolt holes suggested the fix had not yet reached the factory floor. The fallout kept coming. Boeing agreed to buy back Spirit Aerosystems, the supplier at the center of it, for close to $5 billion, pulling the troubled production back in-house. New leadership promised again to put safety before speed. And in a decision that stunned the victims' families, prosecutors ultimately chose not to put Boeing on trial over the crashes. For a company that builds a huge share of the world's airliners, the deepest damage was not the fines. It was trust, the one thing an aircraft maker cannot afford to lose. The door plug held for months on 4 bolts that weren't there. Maybe that's the whole story in a single image. Not one dramatic failure, but a slow one, a great company drifting, warning by ignored warning, until the gap between how good Boeing looked and how it actually worked finally blew open at 16,000 feet. The bolts were missing long before the door ever was. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe. New collapses and comebacks land 3 times a week.